Welcome to this episode of Raising Healthy Mothers. It is October. Hopefully you are well back into the swing of things with back to school, but the weather's got colder and I bet you have already had your first sign of the season of snot arriving. Germs everywhere, the days are shorter, we're indoors so much more, and things are going to get messy from the snot point of view. And of course, that's not what you want. What you want this winter is to not think, oh my goodness, everyone's going to get sick in the next few days or the next few weeks. So in this episode, I'm just going to talk you through how you don't have to overhaul everything, because I have a really simple framework that talks you through the different things to think about when it comes to immune health, and an idea to just take things step by step. As you know, that is what I do. I take things slowly. We do small bits, bit by bit, every day consistently, rather than doing big overhauls that are just going to make things really complicated for you. So when we think about what can I do for my immune health, quite often we think, what supplements can I take? What do I need to do when I actually get a cold? Is there any specific foods to eat or any supplements I can take that can help reduce how long this cold is going to be? And the thing is, we've become so used to having a quick fix when it comes to being unwell. Like, we might go to the doctor and hope to get some medicine if we're really unwell. And that's why quite often when we think, oh gosh, I'm about to get a cold, I'm feeling really unwell, what supplement do I need? But the thing is, what really works is anchoring into these simple pillars that I'm going to talk you through in a minute, and really understanding that it's not about what you're going to do when you're sick. It's about understanding what you need to do all the time, but especially when, October rolls around and things are going to get a little bit harder when it comes to immune health. This is going to give you a little bit of structure around the things that you can do to help yourself, because I know you're already ready for change. I know you don't want to have another winter like last year where everyone was sick all the time. So buckle up. This is going to really, really help you this year. So the 5 S's then that I have already mentioned before. So this came about when we were really in the middle of COVID, and there was obviously a lot of panic around what can we do for ourselves? How can we make sure our immune system is working properly? There was a lot of talk about boosting the immune system. And actually, we don't really necessarily want to boost the immune system, because if we make our immune system work too hard or too fast, it can actually have the opposite effect and not actually do us any favours. But that's a little bit more detail than perhaps any necessarily need. But this idea around the fact that, what can I do when there is a pandemic out there and I really don't want to get sick? And it was a really scary time. We felt really out of control, and this was something that I felt I could share that would help give people a little bit of sense of control around themselves, their health, and the way that they can live their lives even within those confines of being in isolation and in lockdown. Obviously, we're not in a pandemic anymore, no one's in lockdown anymore, but the principles around making sure that your immune system is resilient and strong still stand. So the 5 S's then, they are sun, sleep, stress, sustenance, and sugar. And I'm going to talk you through each one step by step. So starting then with sun. Now, we are in October. Obviously, we're in autumn, so it isn't that warm outside. And also, it's not very sunny. So I still call it sun because I wanted to keep with that S theme. But it is about getting outside, getting some fresh air, spending even just 10 minutes on a daily basis. Why? Getting outside really helps to lift the mood, and that is really important if we are feeling low, down in the dumps, glum. That can cause our immune system to also dampen down a little bit because it doesn't feel safe. So as we are in October, we're not able to make the vitamin D that we would like to make from the sun at this time of year, so that's not necessarily going to help us at this point. But vitamin D is a really important nutrient for immune support. So if you know that that is something that you could struggle with, then you might consider getting a blood test and considering some supplementation. But it's also getting outside and getting in the sun and getting in the light helps to let our body know that it is actually daytime now. And that's really important because it releases all these hormones that then set our body up for knowing that later on it's going to be nighttime, and that's going to make sure that we sleep properly. And I'm going to talk about sleep in a second anyway. But generally speaking, in winter, being out in fresh air is really important. The reason why we get these bugs so much more easily is because when we're in enclosed spaces, with the window closed, with the heating on, without that fresh air circulating, all those germs just kind of stay in closer quarters than us. They don't get to circulate around with the fresh air. And so that's why we are catching them so much more. So getting outside, opening your window, just getting that fresh air is going to make a huge difference to your ability to cope with any bugs that come your way. So sleep, I already mentioned sleep, but here's the thing, really protect your bedtime routines. Go for quality, even if quantity is tricky. So if you are in the throes of your child waking up all the time, maybe your toddler comes and joins you in bed all the time, maybe they wake up really early, you might not have a lot of control over how much time you get in bed. But please, you can do so much to make sure the quality of your sleep is really, really good. And I've got loads of episodes on how to make sure your sleep is good quality, so you can look back over the archives on that. But getting adequate, good quality sleep is really cornerstone to good immunity. It's found that people who sleep fewer than 6 hours a night are 4 times more likely to catch a cold when you are exposed to a virus. So that's quite scary, especially if you are being woken in the night by your children. You don't feel like you have any control over it. But the first thing I would say is get to bed earlier, even if you feel like that means you just don't get the evening time that you would like. But just knowing that statistic, that if you're not getting enough sleep, then you're way more likely to catch a cold if you're exposed to that virus. And also, if we're not sleeping well enough, if we have really broken sleep, that is going to affect how well we can then fight an infection as well. So it's really, really key to know that sleep is such an important part of it. So the next S is sugar. So again, this isn't about demonizing one food group or saying that all sugar is bad or anything. It's just a lot more about noticing what your sugar is like, then making sure that it's balanced out with protein and fiber, and just making whatever swaps you can to make sure that you are not massively over consuming sugar, because this is something that we easily do, whether we add it to our coffee and tea, or whether we have it in our biscuits, or whether we reach for pastries quite a lot. When we're tired, when we're underslept, it's really hard to make that decision not to go for that extra sugar. I know you know that on those nights when you sleep really, really well, you make brilliant food choices. And that's just because when we're tired, it's so much harder to make a decision. Reducing sugar intake can really help your immune system focus on staying well, rather than having to deal with the excess inflammation that is caused by eating sugar, because that is what happens in your body. Once you eat sugar, there's inflammation happening in your body, and that means your immune system has to deal with that inflammation rather than kind of paying attention to what viruses and so on are out there. And then the next S is sustenance. So this is about eating nourishing meals that are full of protein, full of colour, because these are going to act as fuel, obviously, for your body, but they're also helping your immune resilience. Your gut bacteria absolutely love a wide variety of colour, lots of different plants, lots of fibre. And then if you kind of take the S of sustenance further, think about soups and stews and smoothies. So there's more S's there for you. These are really key to nourishment in winter and when you're trying to focus on your immune health. These are foods that are easy to digest, they're nourishing, often they're warming foods if you're going with the soups and the stews. And that means that they're really high in key micronutrients and protein and fat, and that makes sure that you're eating the nutrients that you need to stay healthy. And these are especially important if you are actually in that recovery phase. So although I said, it's not about what to do when you're actually already sick, this is something to think about. So making sure that you have your soups ready to go if you know you're about to catch a bug or you're about to be really sick. And then stress. Stress has a huge impact on your immune system's ability to fight infections and viruses and so on from the external world. So when you're stressed, cortisol and other stress hormones are released, and these suppress your immune function and they increase inflammation. So I already talked about inflammation, how if you have inflammation in your body, then your immune system is trying to deal with that inflammation, and that makes you more vulnerable to infections and illness because it's kind of distracted. It's got other things to do as well as looking out for what might happen from the outside world. So taking really tiny daily pauses, a breath, a tea break, going out for a quick walk. We've just finished a self-care week over here, and that was where the participants really understood the power of taking 5-minute breaks. It was one of the biggest kind of aha light bulb moments that came back, because they were saying, wow, I didn't really realize what I could achieve in terms of taking that pause in just 5 minutes. Because we kind of think of self-care and kind of stress management is this big thing that takes a lot of time and you have to sit for hours in meditation. No, it's just about taking 5 minutes here and there. So these 5 S's, so we've already talked about them: sugar, sun, sleep, stress and sustenance. They're not rules. I'm not about kind of giving you all these rules that you must live by, and if you don't, you're going to absolutely fail. Absolutely not. They are levers, which means that you can just pull them when they feel good, when it feels right, when you feel ready, to make sure that you are in good shape, to get your body into that kind of immune health resilience that you're looking for. Now, you don't have to do all 5 at once. Pick one that feels maybe the easiest as a starting point and see what difference you notice. Remember, this is about preventative steps. It's not about waiting until you've got that scratchy throat and that first cough. It's about starting this now and then knowing that whatever happens, if you do catch a bug or if you do get an infection, you have done your best to put your body in the best state possible to manage it. So your action point then for today is to choose which S you're going to focus on this week and then commit to it. Write it down, decide what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, what it's going to look like. And then remember to look back on it and think, well, did that make a difference to me? Did I actually notice a change in my energy and my mood? Or did I notice that someone coughed really near me and normally you'd freak out a little bit, but actually I didn't because I knew I was doing my best? So coming up in a couple of weeks' time, we have got the Winter Wellness Reset, and we are going to build all 5 S's into our daily meals and our rhythms. So this is about putting what I'm talking about into practice in a community setting with support and space to ask questions and motivation and accountability as well. If that sounds like what you really need this year to just make sure that this winter is the one that you stay strong, I'd love to have you there. You can join the waitlist at tashadecruz.com/waitlist, and then you will be the first to know when it's ready for sign up. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Raising Healthy Mothers. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.